Although eating disorders are often viewed as a physical disorder, they actually dive much deeper than just food. In fact, these disorders are deeply rooted in the psyche and are referred to as mental disorders. So, what are the different types and what are their main symptoms? Welcome back, Psychos. Today we'll be discussing 6 main types of eating disorders and their symptoms. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as click the notification bell so that you never miss a video. Number 1. Anorexia nervosa. Anorexia nervosa, often referred to as just anorexia, is one of the most commonly known eating disorders. Generally developing during adolescence or young adulthood, anorexia is known to affect more women than men, but is still very prevalent in both sexes. People who suffer from anorexia usually have accompanied thoughts of body dysmorphia, which is when one has a very different view of their physical bodies than what they actually look like. When dealing with anorexia specifically, people view themselves to be overweight or larger than they actually are, causing them to restrict their food intake. This then leads to these sufferers to constantly monitor their calories, avoid eating certain foods, and tend to restrict their calories severely. Common symptoms of anorexia include very restrictive eating rules, intense fear of gaining weight even if they are considerably underweight, a persistent goal of becoming thinner, extremely poor self-esteem, and a distorted body image with the denial of being underweight despite medical proof. Other common traits of someone dealing with anorexia could be over-exercising, fasting or dieting, which are all in an attempt to get closer to their distorted goal of becoming thinner or avoiding weight gain. Sooner or later, the body will begin to react by the person experiencing the thinning of bones, brittle nails and hair, and a protective growth of fine hair all over their body as warmth. Number 2. Bulimia nervosa. Bulimia nervosa, also known as bulimia or binging and purging disorder, is the other well-known eating disorder. Much like anorexia, bulimia tends to develop during adolescence or adulthood, and appears to be more common among women compared to men. Bulimia usually stems from an underlying restrictive eating disorder in which the sufferer has deemed food as good and bad. The bad foods are usually the ones they binge abnormally large amounts until they become painfully full or extremely guilty, to which they then purge the foods to relieve discomfort and avoid the calories consumed. This is because they feel an overwhelming lack of control when binging on the foods they would have otherwise restricted for themselves. Common purging behaviours include vomiting, fasting, abusing laxatives or diuretics, the use of enemas, and excessive exercise. Because of the restrictive eating patterns that most bulimia nervosa sufferers relate to, it's very common for people to suffer from bulimia with bouts of anorexia, all in an attempt to avoid gaining weight. However, often enough, bulimia sufferers usually maintain a healthy weight due to the consumption of foods that were deemed good. Therefore, it can be more difficult to notice physical changes in someone with bulimia compared to someone with anorexia. Therefore, it's important to understand the common symptoms and behaviours of someone with bulimia in order to learn support. The most common of these symptoms include repetitive episodes of binge eating, a major influence of body shape, avoidance of weight gain, and food rules that otherwise wouldn't make sense. Other common traits that are related to anorexia, as we mentioned, would be over-exercising, fasting, and dieting. Physical side effects of bulimia include swollen saliva glands, sore throat, decayed teeth, or worn tooth enamel, severe dehydration, irritation of the gut, and hormonal imbalance. Number 3. Binge eating disorder. Binge eating disorder is actually one of the most common eating disorders in America, but it's not commonly known to be an eating disorder. Binge eating is what bulimia sufferers suffer from, except binge eaters don't turn to purging methods in an attempt to rid themselves of the calories. Binge eating can become apparent in adolescence, early or late adulthood, and is sometimes triggered by a traumatizing event. It is characterized by eating large amounts of food in a short period of time with a sense of complete loss of control and often starting out with no hunger to begin with. For binge eaters, food is usually used as a sense of comfort and a crutch to negative thoughts through their everyday stresses. In other words, binge eaters tend to abuse food as an alcoholic would abuse alcohol. Common symptoms of binge eaters would include eating large amounts of food, often unhealthy food, lack of control when it comes to food, feelings of shame and guilt after binge eating, hiding food or eating in private, and no accompanied use of purging behaviours. Side effects include being overweight, which runs the risk of associated illnesses like heart disease, stroke, or type 2 diabetes. Number 4. Pica. Pica is an eating disorder that is definitely considered to be one of the less common of the 6. You may have seen this disorder on reality shows such as My Strange Addictions, which show people that have an overwhelming craving for eating things that are not edible. For example, drywall, chalk, couch cushions, pebbles, hair, bleach, and the list goes on. Pica can occur in adults, yet the first sign of it is often seen in children or teens. According to the US National Library of Medicine, the disorder is often observed in pregnant women, children, and individuals with underlying mental disabilities. Doctors aren't exactly sure what causes the cravings for inedible items, but they have seen a correlation with iron and zinc deficiencies. Number 5. Restrictive food disorder. Restrictive food disorder, also known as avoidant food intake disorder, is an eating disorder that has been revisited by doctors, as it was often referred to as a diagnosis that only affected children 7 years old and under, and is now known to affect people of all ages, but is usually developed in early childhood. This type of eating disorder is seen in men and women equally. The main characteristics of restrictive food intake disorder is the experience of disturbed eating due to a lack of interest in food in general, or a distaste for certain smells, textures, colours, and temperature in food. This disorder goes past the point of just picky eaters or low food intake. Common symptoms of restrictive food intake disorder is avoidance in food to the point of low calorie and nutrient intake, eating habits that cause an interference in normal social functions that include food and nutrient deficiencies caused by a dependency on supplements. And number 6. Orthorexia. Orthorexia is a newly documented eating disorder that has become more and more prevalent as we've been exposed to new diet culture of different, healthy ways of eating. Orthorexia is defined as having an unsafe obsession with healthy foods. The idea of eating only the healthiest, cleanest, or purest foods becomes so deeply rooted in people with orthorexia that it begins to interfere with their social lives and sometimes even their physical health. This disorder is considered to be more prevalent among young women compared to that of any other gender or age. The ability to research any topic and be influenced by other people's lifestyles by the World Wide Web comes with its negatives, and orthorexia is one of them. With new diets and cultures surrounding those diets such as veganism, keto, gluten-free, sugar-free, intermittent fasting, etc., there's no doubt that people may take the information too far, even when experiencing adverse effects. A common symptom of orthorexia includes an obsession with knowing all ingredients in everything they eat, avoidance or fear in eating foods that are deemed as healthy, and obsessively following healthy lifestyle bloggers and doing exactly what they say. There's still a lot more to be discovered about orthorexia, yet it's good to know that sometimes the idea of health can be taken too far. Well, psychos, that's it for today's video. Make sure to leave us a like, share this video with your friends, and also subscribe to our channel for more psycho videos. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you in the next one.